Hello there, my friends. This is Auntie Diane, and today I'm going to give a quick synopsis and review of the original Psycho from 1960. Our story begins in Phoenix, Arizona, with a lady named Marion Crane, who's, I guess, about in her late 20s. She's got a boyfriend, and they show her with an extended long lunch in a motel room with her boyfriend. They're discussing why they can't get married yet because he's paying a lot of alimony to his ex-wife and doesn't want to marry her till he's better financially set. Apparently, he lives over the border in California, not too far from Phoenix, but where they can't see each other, all the time. It's a little bit of a trip. She gets back to the office pretty late, and luckily her boss is out to lunch with his latest client. Comes back and he says he needs her to take a big deposit of $40,000, which was a lot of money in 1960, to the bank so it will be safe over the weekend. This is a Friday afternoon. Before she leaves to do her errand, she said, "Would you mind if I just go home from there? I have a terrible headache and I'm really not feeling good." He said, "Okay, see you Monday." She goes directly home instead of to the bank. She is very tempted and says, "Boy, what I could do with that money, maybe get her boyfriend out of debt or just whatever." She changes her clothes, packs her suitcase, and I know the picture only shows 100s, but trust me, it's $40,000 she's got. She packs her suitcase and goes to leave town. Incidentally, her boss is walking across the street when he sees her going towards out of town, and he does like a second look. He's like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And she doesn't think anything of it. Apparently where she's going is to California, not far from where her boyfriend lives. Marion's driving for quite a while, and she pulls over and falls asleep. A cop actually stops her and says, "Can I see your license?" She's like, "I'm sorry, I was just so tired. I wanted to just go to sleep. I didn't think I was going to stay asleep all night." He has to see her license. She's like, "Why?" She's like all paranoid and stuff. Finally, she shows her license and he lets her go. Her next stop is to a used car lot, and she's very anxious. She goes, "Can I trade this car in for another one?" And he goes, "Yeah, there's nothing wrong with my car." He goes, "You're just sick of it?" She goes, "Yeah." And she goes, "I'm kind of in a hurry." He's like, "Wow, that's the first time I've ever heard a customer, give high pressure to a salesman." She gives him all the paperwork he needs. Guess who drives up? The cop. And he's talking to the salesman going, "That lady's a little bit weird. She's a little bit suspicious," and she's kind of like watching them. She goes and gets a newspaper, and she's waiting. He goes, "Okay, we checked out the car that you're trading in. That plus $700 will be what we need to trade for the other car." So she goes in the ladies' room, and she has this big envelope with the money, and she kind of moves just the 700 into one section and puts the rest covered back up with the newspaper so nobody would know that it's really money. She goes back and gives it to him, and she's such a hurry that she, for some reason, I know when you get a new car, maybe he just gave her the loaner license plate, but the new license plate's of California, so she's over the border of California now. And she's in such a hurry. He's like, wait a minute, you forgot your suitcase." So he puts it in the back seat. That's how much of a hurry she's in, which makes him and the cop even more suspicious. As she's driving, she's thinking about it and stuff, and she's getting more and more paranoid. Those desert roads seem to go on forever and ever and ever, and as she's driving, she has all sorts of scenarios in her head about people talking about her. "She's been my secretary for years. I thought I could trust her," and all these conversations. Everyone's saying, "Where could she be?" She's driving and driving. It starts getting dark. She's very tired. She's driving. She sees a motel that has a vacancy, and it's starting to rain. It's pretty nasty out there, and it's kind of a desolate area. So she stops to see if she could get a room. This is no Hilton or Holiday Inn, even for that matter. It's one of those motels with little separate, rooms like that. And she looks, and there's nobody in the office. However, she does see a house up the hill. So she gets back in her house and starts beeping the horn like crazy. And eventually somebody comes down holding an umbrella. Norman is the guy who runs the motel, and he said that he hardly gets any customers because they made a new highway. She's like, "Oh, I was wondering. I thought I got off the main road." She signs in, but not under her real name. She puts Marie Samuels because Sam is her boyfriend's name. He looks, he believes her. She checks in her room, and then she goes, "Is there anywhere to eat around here?" And he's like, "No, the closest place is 10 miles. It's still raining like crazy." He goes, "Well, I'm going to have something to eat anyway, so why don't you join me?" So she said, okay. And in the back of his office, there's a room with like a bunch of stuffed birds, dead stuffed birds. Uh, she had heard him yelling with his mother's, an old lady voice going, "I'm not going to have some strange girl up in this house," and all that stuff. He runs down with the tray. She's like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make any trouble." He's like, "No, my mother's old and sick, and sometimes she's there sometimes, and sometimes she's not." She's eating with him, and he's acting a little weird. She's like, "Aren't you a little bit bored around here? I mean, do you go out with your friends?" He goes, "A man's best friend is his mother." And that was like so weird. And she's starting to think he's really nuts. Because, my mother's been sick, and I can't leave her alone. My father had died, and, she got remarried, and her second husband died too. So she's all alone if I'm not with her. So Marion says, "Isn't there somewhere that you could put her?" And he gets really mad. "You're talking about an asylum. I am not putting my mother in an asylum." So by now, it's a little bit uncomfortable. So Marion's like, "Well, I'm going to head to bed now. I'm really tired." He's like, "Oh, I was hoping you'd stay and talk to me more." She's like, "I'm sorry. I really got to go to sleep." He's like, "Well, I'll bring you breakfast first thing in the morning." Norman gave Marion cabin number 1, which just so happens to be next to his office, where he can look at the peephole as she undresses. As Marion is enjoying her shower after being on the road all day, she gets a surprise visitor. The audience sees a silhouette of an old lady in a dress. Marion doesn't see it until she starts getting stabbed over and over again. Marion tries to defend herself against her attacker, but it's no use, and she falls down in the tub, and she is now deceased. A few minutes later, you hear Norman yelling, "Mother, Mother, what did you do? How could you do that?" And like the good, faithful son, he cleans up the entire mess, blood and everything. Even pulls down the shower curtain and wraps her up in it. After loading Marion's body into the trunk of the car, her luggage, and even the newspaper, which had the money inside it, wrapped up in it, he had no idea it was there. He puts everything in the car and rolls it into the swamp, waits for it to be covered totally by the water. After the private eye talks to Marion's sister and her boyfriend, he goes around to all the motels in the area to see if Marion might have stopped in one of them. First, Norman said, "No, we haven't had anybody here in weeks." So the PI says, "Can I look in your book?" He goes, "Yeah, go ahead." "Ah, Marie Samuels. She put a fake name here, and Sam is her boyfriend's name." He shows her pictures. "Have you seen her?" He goes, "No." And then after he says, "Well, this is her signature. This is her handwriting." "Oh, yeah, her hair was wet from the rain. I guess I didn't recognize her. She just came in, spent the night, and then left the next morning." He did mention slightly that they had dinner together in the back room because there was nothing open at the time. The PI asks if he can go talk to his mother in the house. He goes, "There's nobody there. I see a person's head in the window." "Oh, that's my mother. She's sick, and she's an invalid. She can't talk to anybody." So he waits till Norman goes to clean some of the rooms. He said he cleans them whether there's guests or not. And he sneaks into the house, and Norman's mother stabs him to death. After waiting a very long time for the PI to get back, Marion's sister and boyfriend start worrying. and they decide to take a ride down there themselves to question Norman, and they pretend they're husband and wife checking in for the night. The sister and boyfriend decide to sneak and peek in all the other rooms to see if there's any trace of Marion. They notice in cabin number 1 there's no shower curtains. That's a little suspicious. And then the sister looks on the floor and sees a little piece of paper with some, mathematical uh, additions and subtractions, $40,000 minus. She said, that is definitely from Marion. It says $40,000, and that looks like your handwriting. So what happens is she plans to sneak up to the house, but has the boyfriend go and have a conversation with Norman. Now, they both think that Norman got the money. They have no idea he was just like a pervert or whatever. So the boyfriend is saying to Norman, oh, I bet you could do a lot with $40,000. You could get rid of this place and go buy a place by the highway and get more customers. And, Norman starts yelling at him, what are you doing? Why don't you just get back in your car and get out of here? And he's like, wait a minute, where's that lady that was with you? The sister sneaks into the house, but hears Norman come in. So she goes and hides in the cellar, which she doesn't realize is where Norman put his mother. So she doesn't, interfere with anybody. So the sister goes down and sees a lady in a rocking chair. She goes, excuse me, miss, I want to just ask you a question. And she turns around and it's just a dead body, a skeleton. And she screams at the top of her lungs. Norman's wicked mother comes after her with a knife. And the boyfriend is nowhere to be found because he was just knocked out by Norman, but he had gotten back up and grabbed Norman from behind. Mother's wig falls off, and that's when you realize it's been Norman all along. The last scene takes place in the police station with the press, the whole police department, a psychiatrist, the sister, and the boyfriend. And the psychiatrist is explaining what happened. Ever since he was a child, Norman, his mom and dad, lived in that house, and they were all very happy together. But when Norman's father died, Norman was never the same again. Norman lived very happily with just him and his mother, like there was no one else on earth, until she met a man. Norman did not like a man taking his place, so he murdered the man and his mom. Norman actually stole the mom's dead body and put another body in its place. And in fact, the psychiatrist said to one of the policemen, are there any missing persons cases? He goes, oh yeah. Since Norman was so jealous of his mother, he assumed that his mother was jealous of him too. And when he met Marion, he was very attracted to her. And right after he looked through the peephole, the mother half of him was angry, and that's why she murdered the girl. Norman acted like he was two people. He would speak for himself and then for his mother. They said he was only half there to begin with. And he got very angry whenever somebody, of course, questioned anything about his mother. One of the cops said, the prisoner would like a blanket. Can I bring it to him? He said, sure. You zoom in on him, and he's talking in the voice of the mother. A mother can never make up for what her child does. She's going through this long thing, and you really have to see it. And his eyes are going back and forth and moving as he talks. And he's trying to convince everyone that she's a very gentle person. Now he's all the mother, the psychiatrist had said. She goes, I'm not even going to swat that fly on my hand. That way people will say, she wouldn't even hurt a fly, and that's when the eyes go up like that. It is so freaky. As the movie ends, you see the car being pulled out of the swamp with uh, everything, including Marion and the money. There is a 1990 remake that is, I'd say the words to the movie and everything is very, very close, just updated for 1990. And another noticeable thing in the movie, because codes for movies and what's allowed and what's not allowed are updated. When Norman is peeking through the peephole, when Marion is getting ready to take a shower, he's not just looking through the peephole. He's doing something else, if you know what I mean. There are many sequels to the movie, too. A lot of them just with the original Tony Perkins. Actually, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I haven't seen any of the. I have seen the 1990 remake, and of course the original about 100 times. But I've never seen like the sequels because I don't know. I guess I was looking for it last night, and you have to pay, and I'm not. I don't know. I'll eventually see it though, and 2 and 3, and then some other ones, and it's just a lot of twists and turns. So I encourage you to go and see it. Now, the original Psycho, 1960, that one is in Internet. I accidentally said Internet Database the other day. It's the Internet Archive. When a movie gets to be a certain number of years went by, it's considered in the Library of Congress or something. It's considered like a classic, and a lot of times it's just because the copyright wore off or whatever. So any older movies you'll find on there for free on the Internet Archive, which is probably why I'm not seeing the remake or the sequels, because they're not old enough yet, I guess. But if you get a chance, see them and let me know how you like them, and then I'll go see them. I read that the original Psycho was actually loosely based on a real life case. Edward Theodore Gein. He was an American killer and body snatcher. I don't see anything about him having a mommy complex or anything, but he is on Wikipedia, so you might want to read about him. It's pretty interesting. I believe he did inspire a couple other movies as well. I got a couple more next week, and see you then. Love you. Bye-bye.